Hello everybody. Hello once again and welcome. Welcome to the Prismata News and Game Dev Insights show, where I rant about various game development topics and things that have come up regarding Prismata, or whatever else is going on. Hey to everybody in the chat. Did I forget to resize the chat again? Someday I will get this all figured out and it'll be less of a clusterfuck. But this is episode 3. We're still figuring things out. And today I wanted to talk about marketing messages. And specifically with regards to Prismata, this is something that's quite challenging. Prismata is a game where, we can't make some kind of viral tweet that has pretty graphics or cute animals or funny joke and have the game go viral like that and spread. Prismata is a gameplay first game. It's a game that's about, deep strategies. And it's hard to sort of sell deep strategies in a one-liner or a quick slogan or something like that. And marketing messaging is all about trying to convince the people who would be interested in Prismata to give it a shot, or to come check it out, or to find out more. And finding the right sort of succinct way to give that pitch to people has been something that we've struggled with for years. And so I want to sort of talk about a lot of the different things we've tried, a lot of the different approaches, as well as successes and failures we've had, what some other games do, and why we're not doing it the way they are, or why we are doing it the way they are, and take you through some of the history of how we've tried to market Prismata through messaging. And so, I think the place where we start is, what are the key marketing messages you have to deliver? Generally speaking, people talk about elevator pitches. They talk about key messages, which are descriptions of a product, like what you do. If you buy a video game in a box, like here I have StarCraft 2 in a box, and you look on the back, they say they'll have a paragraph that kind of describes what the game's about, right? In the distant future, in the darkest reaches of space, the ghosts of the past whisper your name. And that tells you nothing about real-time strategy, right? Or something like that. It's just like a line that is designed to hook people and sort of captivate them into the sort of story and universe of the game, rather than the gameplay or the strategy or anything like that. And they'll talk about the features there's this many different units, and you could play as Protoss, Terran, and Zerg. And that's sort of the direction in which StarCraft 2 was marketed towards a sort of mass audience. But Prismata is a much more niche product than that. Prismata, if I ask people what's good about Prismata, why is Prismata a good game? They often tell me things about the game mechanics, right? When we started creating Prismata, our goal was to make the ultimate strategy game by combining all the things we found interesting in other strategy games. And that idea and that concept and what we've delivered based on it is so far removed from, some sci-fi space game. That sort of bridging the gap and reaching our intended audience requires us to be clever with words. The unique gameplay scenarios, the fact that when you play a game of Prismata, you can have any set of units and it's different every time. That's actually something that's very appealing to people, but it doesn't really get to the core of why Prismata is interesting, or why the type of strategy game that Prismata is so different than other games. We often try to sell novelty, right? We try to sell, there's RTS, there's card games, there's tabletop strategy games, and there's Prismata. It's a type of game that you've never experienced before. And if we say that to people, a lot of people don't believe us. We tried, back during Kickstarter, we thought about making up a name for a genre. Maybe Prismata is a quick-fire strategy game, or maybe it would just be called a pure strategy game or something like that, to try and describe the product in a way that makes people realize that it's not in one of these other categories. And we never found anything that really worked. But we tried really hard. Let me give you an example of some other products. Like, the way I describe Prismata to somebody often depends on what their background is. So if I know somebody who's really into RTS, I can say, well, Prismata's just imagine RTS where you completely remove the map and simulate everything, right? With just cards. All the resources, the build orders, the rush timings, everything is just simulated. And you're this swarm wielder who's the person commanding over the simulation. You're giving orders to your units, but not on a map, right? It's all a simulation. People who play RTS go, yeah, that's kind of interesting. And if we say, we talk about the different units and the variety in the gameplay and the fact that there's no fog of war, that appeals to people. But something else that appeals to people is accessibility, because most people actually think of RTS as a strategy game that's mostly about mechanics and is only about strategy at a really high level once you've sort of mastered the mechanics, or once you've been matched to a person who's at your level in mechanics. That's when the strategy starts to be a differentiator. But in a game like StarCraft, if your opponent's clicking faster than you, building stuff faster than you, you're dead. You don't have a chance. All of the strategic planning in the world is not going to cause you to be able to beat them if they're just, playing competently and are way faster than you. That's just kind of how the game works. And the fact that Prismata doesn't have that feature is something that's appealing to a large number of people who really are interested in the strategy more than they are clicking fast. And last year there was an RTS game that came out called Tooth and Tail, which attempted to do the same thing, but didn't remove the real time. It was still a real-time strategy game, but it was vastly simplified relative to something like StarCraft in terms of the multitasking, in terms of what you had to do, but it was still a game that had a high skill ceiling and you could play at a competitive level. But they tried to sell their product as, kind of a cutesy RTS or a junior RTS or a more approachable RTS, and I think their messaging was well received. And something that's kind of interesting about Prismata relative to that game is that we simplify RTS in the exact opposite way that they do, right? They still have a map, they still have moving around the map and sort of controlling units. And they've simplified the resources and the tech tree and other things. We have complicated resource system, complicated tech tree, and no map, right? So it's gone in the opposite direction. And the other thing about RTS that's a big deal to a lot of people is, like a lot of StarCraft 2 players especially, they experience this notion of they play a build order out, they don't really scout their opponent that well, and then half the time it works, half the time it doesn't. If their opponent plays the thing that's weak to their build, then they win. Otherwise they lose. It's like a rock, paper, scissors, right? And by removing Fog of War, Prismata eliminates that aspect of the game as well. Like, you're constantly aware of what your opponent's doing and you can play to counter them. And so when I'm explaining Prismata to an RTS player, I sort of explain those differences and I say, there's all this variety, there's no Fog of War, and there's no map, and the game's very approachable, and they go, okay, that sounds cool, I want to try it. But that messaging is not universal because a large percentage of our audience either doesn't like RTS or hasn't really played it much. And if they don't like RTS, then I certainly don't want to tell people, oh, Prismata is similar to an RTS, right? You often don't want your messaging to compare to other products because many people in your target audience might not like a certain product. Like, we have this PC Gamer quote that's up on our website, which is the best parts of StarCraft and Hearthstone. And that actually isn't the best way to sell the game, because a lot of people think Hearthstone's bullshit, and a lot of people don't like StarCraft. So it's hard for us to create a message that sort of says what we want to say without turning people off. One of my favorite ways to describe Prismata is, we have a narrative approach. Let me explain this to you. So I'm trying to find here we go. we've created so many pitches over the years, but one that we've never really used is a pitch based on the story and the plot and the narrative. See if I can pull this over here. One moment, here we go. Okay. So this is, this is something that we've sort of had on the back burner for a long time, that we would use as a narrative pitch to the product. Travel hundreds of years into the future to the tidally locked planet Beacon, where Earth's descendants have engineered a prosperous new civilization using the power of advanced artificial intelligence to avoid the mistakes of past generations. And this is something that we've never described Prismata as. But it's the type of marketing messaging that we're going to be using more and more of in the future as we try to appeal to a larger audience. And this of course accompanied with those images of the characters we have, Suede and Anya and the other characters, to try and create this feeling of, it's a sci-fi game where you're playing a person who's controlling a big army of robots, right? And there's sort of this power fantasy of, you're the human commander of this big robotic army, you're a swarm wielder. And you're a highly respected member of society. And there's this sort of new way of warfare that's futuristic. And these sentences like, masterfully control your army of robotic warriors as you manage resources, unlock new technologies, and strategically dominate your foes, right? This is sort of a marketing message that's a power fantasy rather than what is the genre of the game and how does gameplay work. And you notice nothing in this description mentions 100 trillion different unit combinations or anything hokey like that, right? Or even what the gameplay is, really. Like, you could read this and think it's an RTS. You probably wouldn't think it's a card game, but it might be a turn-based strategy game like a 4X game or like Civ or something, like, so there's that aspect which we have not really explored in the past, and now we're sort of moving towards. Something else that we've done is just tried to talk about the game's features. We're a competitive esports game that has, ranked matchmaking, weekly events, observing, replay sharing, an active community, and that, again, is going to appeal to a completely different set of people, because some people really want like an exciting esports title or a competitive title that they can become the best at. And I think we've done really well in appealing to that audience in the past, but if we want to grow this game, we have to grow it beyond that specific audience. So that type of messaging is not going to be the messaging that you see featured super prominently on our Steam page or anything like that. Our community, I think, is highly active relative to the size of the player base. In terms of the level of discussion and like we have a Discord and a subreddit where people talk about good stuff related to the game, right? It's that's a salient feature for a lot of people. Another thing that we've tried is the testimonial approach. And let me show you this. So this is a series of testimonials that we used during our Kickstarter. And I can zoom in on this a little bit, I think. And we solicited this on Reddit. We went on Reddit and said, hey guys, what do you think of Prismata? What appeals to you about the game? Why do you like it? What interests you about the game? And we got some of these responses, which were mostly like, they were mostly just people trying to explain how good the game is, but in most cases not actually really explaining why. This person mentions esports. This person just mentions they haven't been doing anything other than playing Prismata. But these are just like a bunch of people saying Prismata is great. And the reason this type of messaging adds value to our marketing efforts is because, like, a lot of people think Prismata is just some clone of a card game, right? Or some bullshit, game that they, before they even have played the game, they already think they know how it works. They kind of judge the book by its cover, and they don't have any reason to believe that the game is novel or that the game is good, right? It's the same thing that happened when people tried to make, good competitive games on mobile. People are like, yeah, this can't possibly be good. This must suck, right? And they sort of concluded that without ever really examining the products. And so stuff that comes from the community is actually a really good way to promote the game, because it lends more credence to the fact that the game's actually good. It's not some clone, it's not some trash that sucks. It's actually a novel, unique product that people who are interested in strategy games should check out. So that's been another approach that we've tried. And, I think it helped during Kickstarter. I know a lot of people said that they thought these testimonials were good. And yeah, our use of, like, do we call it a strategy game? Do we call it a card game? I have always tried to avoid the phrase card game when talking about Prismata, because people assume, like, the first thing they assume is something about the business model. They assume it's a pay-to-win game where you have to collect cards. And a lot of people are really turned off by that, and especially if they already play a few card games, they don't want to, like, start playing another card game, because they see it as a product where they have to sink tons and tons of hours into it before they really sort of get into it, and they expect that they're going to have to spend money before they really get to experience the real competitive side of the game, and a lot of money more often than not. So that turns people off. Another way we've tried to message Prismata is this sort of more visceral or emotional way of describing the game. Like, I always tell this story to people about how Prismata was not something we invented, it was something we discovered. It was a rule set that we experimented with, and we just found that it was so much more deep and compelling than we thought it would be. And we spent years refining the set of units and the sort of mechanics related to resources and combat around this very simple rule set that just turned out to be like a golden discovery. When we realized that this type of turn-based resource management RTS simulation gameplay, like when we first played Prismata, we had a version of Drone Engineer, Blast Forge, Steel Splitter Wall. And we thought that it would be something stupid that we would solve in like 10 minutes. And when we realized that we couldn't solve it in 10 minutes, and couldn't solve it in an hour, and couldn't solve it in a weekend, and couldn't solve it in weeks, and we're still finding interesting lines for player 1 and player 2, that's when we knew we found something compelling. And I remember very vividly, it was probably about 5 years ago almost now, when a certain friend came to visit him. We taught him to play Prismata. We taught him at 6 p.m. in the evening, and he was still playing at 9 a.m. the next day, because he was just so engrossed and compelled by the game's mechanics. And it's one of those things where, as you play the game, you want to try different things, you want to learn more, you want to discover new build orders. And it's so hard to put into words, but I can, explain sort of through my own experiences how that affected me as a person and how compelled I felt to play the game, and that it for years was the most compelling game I'd ever played, right? And coming out of the mouth of the guy who's trying to sell it to you, a lot of people don't necessarily buy that. They see it as just marketing wank. But genuinely, that's how I felt about the game. And when other people who are not Lunark Studios marketers say those things, and people listen, it means something to us, right? So, those are sort of the different ways we've tried to message Prismata. Some have failed in the past. Some have resulted in us collecting a community of players that are maybe focused more around one specific goal of Prismata than other things. But in the future, we're going to be sort of expanding those approaches and doing different things. And you'll see new marketing messaging appear on Steam when we launch the product. the community approach is one that I think is very important to us, because sometimes the most important message about the game is not the one we're saying, it's the one the community's saying. And a lot of games that have trouble with their messaging, what they often find that they do is they kind of let the community speak for them, and then they just try to amplify whatever the community feels is true about the game, or whatever messages the community feels are the most salient messages with regards to describing the game, explaining the game, or sort of promoting it in a succinct way. And anyways, the one thing I want to plug is that I have made a new testimonials thread on Reddit. So we are requesting more testimonials for our Steam marketing. I will dump a link in the chat. If any of you guys have anything you want to say about Prismata that you think would make a good quote for us to use anywhere as a testimonial, or even if it's just like a description of the game that really speaks to you, or an experience that you had with the game that's sort of succinct and from the heart that you would like to share, like, you stayed up all night instead of studying for your exams. Like, I know that's a cliche one, but, some people have really meaningful experiences with the game and want to share them, and we're always happy to hear those. So if you have any testimonials or want to give them, I would certainly appreciate it very much. If you want to PM them to me instead of posting them publicly, that's fine too. But if you have any, we'd love to use them. I think that's all for today's main talk. So I'm just going to go to Q&A. If you guys have any questions about stuff relating to marketing messaging or any other topic in general, just paste it in the Twitch chat right now, and I'd be happy to answer. You guys are dumping your testimonials in the Twitch chat. I don't want your testimonials in the Twitch chat. Dump them on Reddit. How many game modes does Prismata have? Well, it depends what you mean by game modes. It's kind of interesting. There was some marketing for a game called No Man's Sky that you may have heard of. They went around saying, like, oh, the game has 4 quadrillion planets, and the developers have never even visited most of them, right? And it's just like, the game's full of procedural generation, right? So it's such a weird way of explaining the fact that the game is procedurally generated, and that really there's just that many different seeds for the RNG or something like that. But somehow the media really ate it up. And, there were articles all over the place that had that as the headline, right? And people bought into the hype. So sometimes people really like numbers. Sometimes people find them really interesting. Sometimes it completely misses the mark. But you can't tell with marketing until it's out. And, I'm not trying to copy the marketing of No Man's Sky, right? That game overpromised and underdelivered in a number of ways. But I do believe that trying different things and seeing sort of what is salient or what resonates with the community is a really good way to find good marketing messages. People hated what No Man's Sky did, so we tried it. Here's the thing about No Man's Sky. They had some of the most successful marketing for an indie game that has happened in the last 10 years, right? They were a tiny little studio making a stupid little procedurally generated game, and somehow everybody was hearing about it everywhere. There were so many news articles written about them. They were on primetime TV shows, talk shows and shit. That doesn't happen to small little indie studios making stupid little games, right? Their marketing was by all means a huge success. You weren't expecting a serious answer. I always give a serious answer to troll questions. That's how I operate. So, Shadowverse like skins or too risque. Here's what Shadowverse did to carve out its own niche. right? Shadowverse is basically just a regular old card game, like Hearthstone or whatever. There's very little in terms of gameplay that differentiates it from these other games. They went with an aesthetic style that is their differentiator. And that sometimes is a really good way to sell a product, right? Just do something somebody else does, but, you know, theirs is red and yours is blue. Theirs is fantasy, yours is anime, right? Like, there will be somebody, some people out there that want to play an anime-themed Hearthstone with, you know, half-naked chicks who, you know, look way too young, right? That's something that speaks to a certain audience, and they're going to want to engage with that product, right? So, you know, if you just want to, like, make a product that makes money, just copy somebody else and do something different, and you can probably steal a small bit of their audience, right? If you execute well. That's not our strategy, right? Our strategy is to do something completely novel in terms of the product itself. So it's a completely different set of challenges than something like Shadowverse. Shadowverse was the first Hearthstone clone. I mean, I feel like there were Hearthstone clones that came out before Hearthstone did. Like, we have a list of all of the sort of competing products that were around at the time. Like, I think Soulforge was the first one. And then there were Scrolls. And I mean, I know none of these games are exact Hearthstone clones. You know, there was a bunch of them early on. It's the Litecoin to Hearthstone's Bitcoin. Like, and there have been so many products that have actually attempted to be original in the way they do things. You know, like Faria and Duelist. Like, those games are pretty different from Hearthstone. But they try to appeal to the same audience. You know, Elder Scrolls Legends, they have the whole two-lane thing. Quite a different game from Hearthstone. Prismata is the latest anime swarm fighter on the market. Yeah, no, I don't mind troll questions. Troll questions are fine. Nobody biting, eh? Okay. Well, I don't want to stick around here too long. If you got any more questions last minute, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to shut the stream off and get some rest. I've been grinding really hard this week on PR stuff. We have the PR team in place. We're moving forward full speed ahead with 12 different plans to market the game. Social media, forums, influencers, YouTube, you name it. How about the plan B to crypto mine with the Prismata Steam client? I mean, the problem is, if you want to make money by crypto mining, you actually have to have a lot of people playing the game. And if we have a lot of people playing Prismata, I'm pretty sure we're going to make way more money, like, selling skins and emotes to them than we are crypto mining with their machines. But, you know, if you have a really popular website that's not otherwise monetizing very well, that's when you try the crypto mining. But I don't think for video games it's really going to be a thing, except for some weird free-to-play mobile shit. If you were in a game versus Lightning and want to post questions now, will you answer them still? Yes, I'm still answering questions. Still answering questions. Put Prismata skins on the blockchain, Cryptomata. Oh, you guys just love your crypto shit. Was Red Rain's last question a troll question? You're just asking questions about asking questions. I see. I'm going to just turn off the stream, and then you're not going to get your actual question answered. When does Prismata ICO? Like, I don't know. We could turn Prismata shards into a cryptocurrency, but then what? People are just going to be selling them on the black market and probably buying less of them from us. So, I don't know. It seems like a risky business proposition. This is the second best State of the Union of the night. There should be a cryptocurrency that unlock by solving Prismata puzzles. Like, if I had infinite clones of myself, then I could try all of these unique business ideas. and if any of them was really effective, we could just run with it, right? But my goal for the moment is shipping this one game and surviving through the launch and early access period. That's it. Did we ever consider selling Prismata posters? Oh, like we tried selling t-shirts and stickers on those sites that do the drop shipping where like literally you have to do absolutely nothing and they just do it for you. You upload the art and sell it. We sold like $10 worth of stuff, right? Like we sold a few t-shirts and a few stickers, never really made anything. I don't think it's a viable business model for a small independent game developer to sort of survive by selling shirts. You know, I think like small YouTube and Twitch content creators can sometimes do that if they really like selling shirts. People with a big audience can supplement their income by selling shirts and posters and stuff like that. It's unlikely to become a major source of revenue. Goal should be to develop a way to clone myself. Well, I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. I don't want to have to do another PhD just so I can, you know, start working on something else. Anya body pillow when? When will the tourney details be announced? Like, okay, we don't even know what the launch day is. We need to know the launch day, and then we'll need to have a day for the tournament, which is, you know, a day or two after. Some streamers are still, like, not aware of their schedules in a few weeks, and you know, we haven't even contacted everybody. It's happening, but I can't say when they'll be announced because I don't even know when they'll be decided. I don't know. If you're a person that really wants an Anya body pillow, like, you know, all the power to you. But I think, I don't know. Do they have body pillows for those chicks in Shadowverse? Yes, we're doing a streamer tournament with launch. Well, around the time when early access starts. I don't know if it'll be on launch day or a few days after, a week after, the weekend following. Like, we're going to try to do a sponsored tournament with some Twitch streamers. I am willing to bet almost 100% there's some site, you know, like Zazzle or something, where you can do body pillows with an uploaded image. So if any of you guys just want the high res for Anya, you can get your own. Or we could try and find a way to sell them. But I think there's also some, like, if we sell body pillows like that are official Lunark Studios body pillows, I think that kind of brands us in a category that some people find unsavory. Like, I'd rather do it through a third party, to be honest, because some people just find it way too creepy. Red Dream's too sophisticated for an Anya body pillow, wants a Rage body pillow. Is making the game moddable ever going to be a thing? We've thought about it. We're not in a position to, like, put a lot of effort toward making the game moddable, nor are we in a position where we even know or understand what the benefits and drawbacks of doing it are. Like, we don't even know how we're going to make money with Prismata yet. Like, we don't know whether it's going to be sales of the in-game skins and emotes, or whether it's going to be sales of puzzle packs and single-player content. You know, if the way we make money is by selling puzzles, then you know, we might want to be careful whether or not we, you know, let people create their own puzzles, because if we do that and then there's millions of puzzles available and most of them are crap, then maybe people won't want to buy puzzle packs from us, right? Like, it's just you know, curation is a problem, and like, we don't have the answers to that question yet, so we have to think about it a bit more. Do we have rear art for Anya? No, actually we don't. Like, you know, if anybody wants to cosplay Anya, like, there is no definition of what the back of her outfit looks like. So if you want to cosplay her, you have to just make it up. And, you know, if you're asking just because you want to have a gander at Anya's rear, then nope, there's nothing for you. Make the entire game anime themed. It's working for Shadowverse. It's kind of funny because somebody on Reddit suggested the same thing, and I know there's people who really love that type of aesthetic, and you know, but I think there's not enough room in the market for two such games. You know, like, if we had made an anime game and then Shadowverse came out, and then we were the other anime game, then that would just be, you know. And I don't think I can do it better than Shadowverse can. I don't know what those people like. I don't really know how to get the right artist to draw that, the material. Like, you know, it's not a product that I think I would be highly effective at producing. I can produce a really good strategy game. You know, anime shit, that's... I'm not going to have a really strong competitive advantage over a team at Shadowverse that's doing it there. What percent of Prismata revenue do you expect to come through whales? Like, I have no idea. I can tell you historically, we've had maybe 2 or 3 people that have spent a lot on skins and emotes in the game, and the total amount spent was like many hundreds or maybe a few thousand between a few people, like, you know, the top 5 people or something. The total sum of how much they spent is like a few $1,000, which is obviously much less than the total amount spent on Kickstarter, or even the total amount of sales since Kickstarter. So, you know, I would be surprised if our game is doing more than like 20% of its revenue from whales. And it would not surprise me at all if it was like 5%. Whereas games like, you know, like those Zynga Facebook games like Cityville or whatever are doing 70% plus from whales. I think there's no way that's going to happen with us. But I don't know. Who will become our overlords first? Definitely AI. Prismata already has a good enough grip on the Weeb demo. Red Ram thinks Shadowverse is creepy. Like, creepy is very relative. There's some things that, like, some people look at Prismata and they think Anya's outfit is like too risque, right? You know, or they think it's, you know, it portrays a negative body image stereotype, right? Whereas some people look at those Shadowverse characters with their, you know, totally unrealistic body proportions and go like, you know, their boobs still aren't big enough, right? Like, different people who consume different types of media have vastly different standards, and we try to just, you know, appeal to a sort of broad range of people who would otherwise be interested in strategy games. We don't want to put anybody off by being too anime. If everyone's a whale, are there no whales? Most video game companies define a whale as a person who spends more than a certain amount of money on the game. You know, it might be $1,000 a year or some specific tier, but they actually do call them whales, and they actually do have spreadsheets that say percentage of whales and stuff like that. Blizzard or Riot offers 100 million to buy Prismata, would you accept it? I think that's way above our valuation, so I would be inclined to, yes, accept it. You know, now those contracts can be very complicated. Like, you know, if I have a series of golden handcuffs attached to me with respect to that contract, where I have to be a slave to them for years before I, you know, before my valuation matures or vests or however they structure it, then there can be a lot of concerns and considerations. If they're gonna like completely trash the game, trash the franchise, you know, if they're gonna buy it just to shut it down, then, you know, I might be disinclined to accept that offer. But you know, generally speaking, that sounds like a good offer to me. And assuming that they wanted to help promote and develop the game, like, you know, I'd be inclined to accept, even if it was sort of at valuation, because I think a company like Blizzard, if they had their full marketing effort behind Prismata, could get it into the hands of more people. And my goal is ultimately just to get more people to play the game. I don't really care about making money as much as I care about growing the game. People have different opinions and preferences. They do. Have you answered the question about a buyout before? Like, those questions are always super nuanced because it depends on the terms of the buyout. It depends on what the company actually wants to do, right? And just a number is not the most important thing. There's a lot of other things that go into those types of decisions. Anyways, I think the questions are kind of slowing down, so I'm going to wrap it up now. Thank you all for coming by, checking out the stream, hanging out with me. And I will see you in the next one. I think we're going to do one this weekend. We did a Saturday one last week, so maybe we'll try a Sunday one this week. We're just trying different times to see what works. And maybe during the Sunday event or right after the Sunday event, I'm not sure. But that's sort of a tentative plan. There will be another episode. I'm going to talk about some of my past game dev experiences, stuff that I've done before, and show you a few things that I've never shown anybody. So, should be fun. Until then, I'll see you next time.